This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Tuesday, February 11th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, my son, fellow investigator Joe Hagmann. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of incredible radio programming, unbiased, uncensored news, information, and analysis. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look beyond the misinformation, the disinformation, the fog of the headlines, the bylines, the agenda, to bring you the true news, the real news. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. We're on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com, and we're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and the HagmannReport.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us. We've got a ton of news to get through very quickly, very important things. So it's great to be here in the studio with you.
Yes, it is. On this Tuesday, we're going to be joined by Stan Deo in the second hour, as always, on Tuesdays here on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And as you said, we have a lot of news to get into, and we can start where you want to start.
Well, you know what? I do want to begin this. I just want to say that I think that we're coming very close to something economically taking place, something, and we've been saying this for a long time. I had the opportunity to speak with the guerrilla economist earlier today, and what I've been trying to do is make sense of different things, and Joe and I have been working on this to check what's going on with the bankers, the banks, the economic plan. Folks, it's not good. It's not good. We had talked briefly, I think it was yesterday, concerning the dead bankers, the people who have reportedly committed suicide or have died under mysterious circumstances, whatever they might be. And it's interesting because, folks, I don't know whether you, ladies and gentlemen, whether you realize this or not, and I think it was reported locally, but I'm not sure how well it was reported on the national scale. But sometime around January 18th, we had Wall Street Journal reporter David Byrd from New Jersey. He left his New Jersey home on Saturday evening on the 18th of January for a quick walk. And that's the last thing anyone ever saw. Period. Now, here is what caught my attention about this, aside from the guerrilla economist, Rogue Money, talking about this, and also the contributor to Steve Quayle's financial alerts. But what caught my eye about this is here we have David Byrd, 55. It was January 11th, not the 18th. I was off by a week. He had quite a few health problems. He, in fact, is a liver transplant recipient, which requires him to take medication twice a day. Of course, that's not happening. He didn't take his medication with him. But when we were looking at this disappearance, well, what was he looking at? What does Mr. Byrd cover? Mr. Byrd covers the energy markets. He's worked for Dow Jones, which owns, of course, the Wall Street Journal, for more than 20 years. So the question turns now to what was Mr. David Byrd working on with respect to the Wall Street Journal reporting on the Davis disappearance. Now, once again, covering the energy markets in particular. Then we had, and I went over this briefly yesterday, but this warrants some additional coverage here. Tim Dickinson dies under mysterious, undisclosed circumstances. Of course, Dickinson is a UK-based communications director at Swiss REAG. Okay, that same period of time, on the 26th of January, William Brokesmith, 58, former senior manager for Deutsche Bank, hanging in his home. Now, note the ages of these people. Carl Slim, 51, the next day, managing director of Tata Motors. Well, he was found dead on the 4th floor of the Shangri-La Hotel in Bangkok. He supposedly committed suicide. He was staying on the 22nd floor with his wife. Okay, now, Tata Motors, it's important to understand the relationship between these people and events. We'll get into that briefly here in just a second. Gabriel McGee, 39 years old. January 28th. You're talking these are all happening a day, one day and the next day and the next day. Gabriel McGee, 39, a J.P. Morgan employee, died after, falling from the roof of the European headquarters in London. McGee was vice president of J.P. Morgan Chase, London headquarters. By the way, he did fall 33 floors. Now, the day after that, Mike Duker, age 50. Duker, very well respected man. He worked for Russell Investment for 5 years. This is the guy that was found dead close to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in Washington State. He was reported missing on January 29th. Now, police say, he could have jumped over a fence and fallen, 30 feet to his death. The police are treating the case as a suicide. Now, folks, here's some important information. Duker joined Russell Investments back in 2008. He wrote for Market Outlook Financial Services publications, and he's the creator and developer of a business cycle index that forecasts economic performance published monthly on the Russell website. But his algorithm, his formula, looks at, and then predicts the anticipated performance of the stock market. Now, this is getting pretty complex here. You can't look at this rash of deaths as being something very simple. Richard Talley, February 6th, just a week ago, less than a week ago, 5 days ago. Now, Richard Talley's the guy. He's the founder and CEO of American Title. And remember that, American Title. Think mortgages. Talley was under investigation by insurance regulators. Well, he was found dead in his home, and Joe and I were talking about this yesterday. Talley was the guy that said that received multiple self-inflicted, in quotation marks, gun wounds from a nail gun. Well, he shot himself 7 or 8 times with a nail gun. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. 57 years old. The coroners, he was found in Colorado. A coroner spokesman said that Talley was found in his garage by a family member. And again, he supposedly died, or reportedly died, from 7 or 8 self-inflicted wounds from a nail gun fired into his torso and head. Okay. Where do you start on this? And I noticed, when I was in my research, I noticed the absolute intellectual disconnect by people who were talking on different forums and even different news sites, saying, well, it's great, what do you call all these bankers that are dead at the start? Well, yeah, I understand. I understand the anger. But people are saying, well, they can't live with themselves, and they can't. It's because of their actions. Folks, it's none of that. They're cleaning house. The people behind these deaths, and I will say this, if you think that these are suicides, you might want to rethink that. House cleaning is being done, and let me tell you something, it's not over. Look for another 3 dozen. Maybe another 3.5 dozen, to meet their demise in ways that are not necessarily usual. I asked V, I said, where does this all start? When did it all start? And of course, it's been ongoing, but if you go back to, you've got to go back to the J.P. Morgan Chase times, when J.P. Morgan Chase did post various losses. So if you go back into April and May of 2012, and even sooner, but if you go in that particular time period, you'll see that there was a lot of mischief taking place here. That's when, of course, the chief investment officer of J.P. Morgan Chase, Ina Guru, was put under the spotlight because of her involvement in derivative transactions, trading, credit default swaps, and so on. But at the very, I'll just say this, if you consider every death so far as a spoke on a wheel, the hub on this, in my view, based on my research, J.P. Morgan Chase. It's interesting because I think one of the first articles and one of the first public interviews that the Guerrilla Economist did was on our show. And he said, the losses by J.P. Morgan Chase, the London whale, remember that, folks? The term, the London whale? Well, do you remember the talk back then? It was a billion or hundreds of millions in losses. Then all of a sudden it grew to $1 billion, then $2 billion, then $7 billion, then $9 billion. The exposure in total to J.P. Morgan Chase is over $100 billion. And that's where it started in earnest, I suppose, looking at this. Now, jump ahead a little bit. You'll recall that Deutsche Bank, remember V talking about Deutsche Bank, on May 14th, on this program, on May 14th of last year, on this program, V came on and said, high-level insider trading is going on. The entire economic system is hanging on the precipice. It's much worse than it was in 2007. One of the largest banks in the Eurozone, Deutsche Bank, well into the danger zone. Deutsche Bank, big bank, biggest bank in Germany, one of the biggest banks in the Eurozone. They're going to go belly up. Watch it. Watch it. I said it. It's going to happen. I'm quoting him, quoting V. They are in such a danger zone, they don't know what to do. Deutsche Bank's derivative debt is greater than the global economy. That is one bank, $72 trillion in derivative exposure. The entire global economy, all countries in the world, is only 66 billion or 66 trillion GDP versus their 72 trillion in derivative exposure. That's one of the last year's program. I mean, his track record is amazing going back to 2012, as is Steve Quayle's with V. In January of 2013, on this program, V said that Japan would begin the primary currency war. And what's taking place right now? A currency war. You know, it was back then that V predicted that the Dow would climb well over 15,000, and that did happen, and that precious metals like gold and silver would be forced down to push the dollar down. Well, since his predictions on Japan, this is back in when he made them in January, in May, the move out of Japanese and European assets accelerated, with the U.S. stock market rising over 2,000 points and the dollar climbing to nearly 84 on the dollar index. So what I guess the reason I mention that is to say that V was absolutely correct. going back to the banker deaths and to kind of summarize this, look at what happened with J.P. Morgan. Folks, you do know that J.P. Morgan Chase sold their headquarters, right? You know that they sold their headquarters here in the United States. That building that you see in downtown Manhattan, that building that you see from Wall Street, that iconic building, you know that was sold to China.
Yes, it was. I read somewhere that China possibly owns upward of 60% of New York City.
There's a lot, yes. Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. But J.P. Morgan sold that building to the Chinese for $725 million. Okay, so $7.25 million. What's underneath that 60-story building in lower Manhattan? Well, what reportedly flooded last year in the storms. Underneath that building in Manhattan is a football-sized field vault that should have our gold, or a lot of it. Why do I mention all this? Because if you start taking these people that are no longer with us, the very people I've mentioned, and you start connecting the dots, it's a very unsettling connect the dot picture puzzle here. If you look at, even though some of these people were very well respected, I don't think I mentioned Dick Weithner in this, or Weithier. By the way, the Swiss REAG Dickinson company connected with the Swiss bank vaults. I mean, this is all about money. This is all about gold or the lack thereof. This is all about these running of dirty schemes. This is all about these people knowing where the bodies are buried, in some cases literally. You're looking at J.P. Morgan selling that $2.5 billion building for $725 million, with it the largest gold vault in the world. We know that gold has been replated. Germany gave us gold that was 0.999% purity, and we replated it. We offered them some gold at 0.993 purity with different serial numbers. What's that all about?
Oh, that's a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Those labs are wrong, and that's, the gold was not messed with, okay? I mean, maybe from it's sitting in the vault so long and aging, some of the gold evaporated into tungsten or changed into tungsten.
Yeah, it does that. And this would be like
like putting, what is it, coal. If you put coal into a bank deposit box for 100 years, you'll get a diamond, 100 years later.
Have to have a heck of a lot of compression on that coal, but
yeah.
I suppose if you put it between the cheeks of a, never mind, I won't go there. Yeah, but here's the deal, folks. This is a war. I'm convinced, and I had the distinct pleasure of talking with V twice today, and at length. And he said, it's over. It's the days of the petrodollar, U.S. petrodollar, are over. This whole petrodollar scheme is over. And you know what I found absolutely amazing, Joe, I got to tell you this. Some time ago, W was on the show last night, our intelligence insider, the last hour.
And I wasn't listening. He was?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm going to take that Nerf bat, smack you so hard.
No, he did a great job. It was good to hear his insight on what he was covering.
Well, I remember a conversation we had. This is maybe a year and a half ago, and he said, that the oil wells in Saudi Arabia, they're dying. There's not the output of Saudi oil, the oil in Saudi Arabia, the Aramco oil, the Saudi oil, the wells were damaged. A lot of them are running out, but a lot of them were damaged during the first Gulf War. What's Syria all about, in addition to changing the geopolitical scheme? It's about energy. It's about buying the future for the next 50 to 100 years. And no, I'm not going to go on the offshoot of Chris Matthews and Benghazi, but that's what Benghazi was all about, just to topple Assad, of course. Somebody sit down with Chris Matthews and tell him that. But this is about oil, energy, and the future. And Iran has more oil than Saudi Arabia and Iraq combined. Now, what's their issue with nuclear power? Well, it's difficult. Well, it's easier. I'll say it this way. It's easier to refine oil with the nuclear power capability than it is to use other means to power the refineries. Now, the ECB is already setting up currency swaps with the Chinese. Our allies, have essentially abandoned us. Entire petrodollar scheme is about to collapse. The creation of the Chinese petro-yuan is growing. We know that China has grabbed a lot of gold, lots of it. We know, let me just toss this out for you folks. Tata Motors, one of the dead bankers, Carl Slim, managing director of Tata Motors. Somebody might want to check to see if there's a connection between Tata Motors and perhaps what the disappeared Wall Street Journal reporter might have been looking into. Folks, this is an open case, his disappearance. Banksters, as they're called, are running scared. Because the man behind this, the entity, the person, the power behind this, well, think of it as a wheel and the hub. What's at the center of the hub in all of this? Don't forget as well, during the bank bailouts, and we must never forget this, during the bank bailouts, who did we bail out? The financial crisis that we were shown back in 2008. Remember that big disclosure a year or so thereafter? Maybe it was 2 years, but the disclosure was the Federal Reserve rushed trillions of dollars in emergency aid, not just to American Wall Street banks, but to motorcycle makers, telecom firms, foreign-owned banks in 2008 and 2009. This is not just a U.S. Ponzi scheme with the Fed. This is a global Ponzi scheme. We pumped up General Electric, Caterpillar, Verizon, Harley-Davidson, Toyota. The central bank's AIDS program supported banks in East Asia, Europe, Canada. While some of the world's largest banks, the biggest users of the the Fed's lending program, were some of the world's largest banks: Citigroup, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Swiss-based UBS, Britain's Barclays. Remember when Bernanke, I think it was Bernanke, said, when he was asked, where did the money go? Are you going to tell us? He said no.
He said hundreds and hundreds of banks that are connected to the Federal Reserve banking system, and Bernie Sanders was asking him the questions, and he said, tell us who they are, or tell us who tell the American people where 2.3 of their tax dollars went. And then he said hundreds and hundreds of banks, and the follow-up question was, tell us who they are, and he said, nope.
Well, I'm no fan of Bernie Sanders, but it's a legitimate question. But see, we almost bit the big one with respect to our financial situation back then. Back in 2008, of course, we know that. But this is I'm looking at this. I'm looking at these banker deaths, and I have to say this: there is, in my view, in my professional investigative opinion, there's not a shadow of a doubt that some of these, if not most, are being silenced for what they know. Now, I don't know, when I say for what they know, does that mean that they're going to talk? Perhaps not necessarily. But could we afford, or could this Jamie Dimon and others, could they afford the potential of them to talk? I don't think so. But I'll say this: we're in for a large financial calamity here. And we're seeing the end game play out right now. I'm currently working on an investigative article, an expose on this. You've got to look, too, at the fraud right now that's taking place in the precious metals suppression, the prices of the precious metals, the scandals in the oil pricing market, the fraud in derivatives. These people they understood the details in each of these respective scandals or criminal activities. They had the ability to blow the whistle and or to be tapped as potential witnesses to criminal activity.
Yeah. And it's not going to stop until we see this all come collapsing down like a standing row of dominoes put together, and it's going to happen.
One last thing, and I'll turn it back to you. Folks, did you just ask me why China is buying all the real estate up here in the United States? Did you ask me that question?
No, I didn't say why. Well, maybe I did ask why.
I think maybe you made an affirmative statement that they are.
They are, yes. And why would they buy it when they probably plan on just coming to take it over anyway?
Well, the mainstream media, the feel-good story is it's a good investment. If you watch CNN, Bloomberg, their videos, if you watch MSNBC, it's because the Chinese know a good deal when they can see it. That's why they're buying property in Florida and other places sight unseen, because they're sold on great buys. Can you imagine Mr. and Mrs. Average American living and listening to this program? If you're in America listening to this program, or I'll say North America listening to this program, now just picture this. You go to a meeting at the Ramada at the airport, and the guy's up there with an easel and a couple of good, a nice projector and a couple of good presentation boards, and they say, "Hey, we got some great brief for you. sight unseen, you're going to chunk down an average. The average right now is $425,000 per person per purchase cash for the property. But the commercial properties are being purchased by the Chinese. Why? Here is the chilling truth. Why? You know all those sweatshops, all those Chinese underage slave labor, young people working in sweatshops for $1 a day? That's going to be your kids, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to be my children.
I don't think so.
Well, okay, grandchildren or great-grandchildren, if, in fact, we do nothing about it.
I was going to say if you're lucky. If you're lucky enough to find places of employment in the future, if we're lucky enough to have the freedom to live, to be allowed to live.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
we see
that's a good caveat, and that's not hyperbole either. That's a very good caveat.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing here is a destruction through spiritual wickedness in high places that has encompassed the whole globe and all its political and economic and societal places that influence, of influence. We have evil in the highest offices of politics in America and in most other countries, in the top offices in banks and financial institutions, the non-governmental organizations like the UN and the World Bank, and these places have not only been founded through Satan and his influence of men, but also going back to what the Bible says about men's imaginations and then the desires of their own hearts. That's how these things have come to how far they have. Satan will whisper in their ear, you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the fame in the world if you just do this or that. And the people's own desires and the people's own imaginations say, yeah, I can do this. That's why the Bible says, not by works. We're not saved by works, nor should you boast about your works, because works could make you prideful, could make you boastful, and we are not to be boastful. But the imagination of men is what the influence of Satan plays on. And men worshiping their own creation, or what they do, their work, and it even could be good works. You could do something good, and if you sit there and brag about it and say to yourself, I'm a great person because I did X, Y, and Z, well, you are being deceived. It's not that you're not good for doing that. It's that you are being we're not supposed to take pride. The glory goes to the Lord, not to the people. Just when we say don't listen to people, have discernment, take the information to the Lord in prayer. Don't take it to the priest. Don't take it to whoever.
But see, Joe, the big thing in my view right now, yes, I agree, and this is a spiritual battle. I agree. But right now we're looking at there is a satanic agenda behind this. But what people are going to see, I suppose, let me put it this way, what your uninformed, non-spiritually connected neighbor is going to see and experience is this headlong rush into a complete global dollar reset, where we are going to lose 70 to 80% of the purchasing power of our fiat currency. We're going to have the cheapest workforce in the entire world. It's going to be your children, their children, that will be in the sweatshops. China is going to be culling the workforce here, which is why they're buying the property here. Now, I'm going to segue into something else. Folks, keep in mind what I just said about the bankers. Keep in mind what I just said about the push for the future. This is what they want. They're investing. They're looking for the future. They're buying they're buying the future. Keep in mind what I said about the oil in Saudi Arabia, and folks, you can look the work of Paul Sperry and others, Jack Cashel, and it's funny. It's funny to see these people. They're certain, how they're marginalized. It's incredible to me. Their message is vital. V's message is vital. Steve Quayle's message is vital. Dave Hodges' message is vital. But see, here's the thing. Along with this, what's the prize here? In addition to buying the future, what's the prize here for the satanic agenda? It's the children, right? A lot of it. I mean, I know where you were going or going to go with that, Joe, as you were reaching for your hot button there. But see,
the prize is the souls of as many souls as they can take.
Right.
I mean, they want your soul, and unfortunately, in this country and across, mostly in this country and across the world. They have succeeded in taking the souls of men without men even knowing that they've given up their souls.
Right.
That's
true. Yes.
The state of the nation and the world right now, we have famines, we have persecutions, trials and tribulations. Everybody's going through some form of those, big or small. And we were told in the Bible that these things would come and they'd happen and they would continue to increase and they would get more frequent and they would be more devastating as time continued to go on.
Well,
and this,
yes, go on.
This persecution, these famines, these trials and tribulations are rapidly taking over our society. And at the same time, you look at they say as above, so below. You look at the witchcraft, the Satanism, and sin in general.
There we go.
Is all being manifest and broadcast and supported by all the outlets that have the means to communicate to the world. At the same time, the people who are speaking out against it, the people who are sticking to the Word of God, who are saved, are the ones being marginalized, as you said.
Right. However, now going back to the children as being the prize, especially, with respect to the Chinese labor, for example. It's interesting because we had people like Paul McGuire, Nathan Liao. I've gotten a couple of emails asking me, why in the world would you try to see things where nothing might be? For example, the symbolism in the Olympics, the symbolism at the Grammys, the symbolism at the Super Bowl. Oh, there is no symbolism there. No, there's nothing there. You're just a conspiracy kook. Well, here is, if you look at the agenda of the New World Order, the Illuminati, the people with the money and the power, folks, you've got to understand the symbolism that we saw in the Olympics with the children, the symbolism that we saw with the children in the Super Bowl commercial. You've got to familiarize with this one aspect of European demonic activity that was adopted by the New World Order. That's maypole, M-A-Y-P-O-L-E. What is that? A maypole is a tall pole erected as part of these demonic celebrations. And what are they symbolizing? This is something that goes back, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it tonight, but I just want to put it in the context of current events. The Maypole celebration is done by children dancing around a pole, which is nothing more than yes, it's a phallic symbol, just like the obelisks that you see all over the world. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of some graphic news, but that's what it's all about. And you see, this maypole dance is the culmination of 13 days, this 13-day festival. And what are they celebrating, these children that are dancing around the maypole? They're celebrating the fact that they were not the ones who were sacrificed. Because we talk about blood sacrifices. We're talking not about the blood this week, the blood of Jesus. But it's also, blood is also an empowerment to the occult. It's part of, what do we see on television all over? It's programs about the vampires, blood, and this
blood,
and that.
guts, gore, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so if you look at this, folks, this is deep in terms of what is being presented to us, what is being these occult holidays, the celebrations like the Maypole celebration, the significance of the winter solstice in 13 weeks, the number 13, and of course the May 1st Maypole celebration, where you've got children dancing around a pole because they were not sacrificed. You see, as the legend goes, the leaders, the elite of villages would go through and grab a hold of the children, as many children, in fact, the brightest and the best of children, at the homes of these villages, and they would sacrifice them in fire, in this big communal fire in the village. Well, the villagers would know when these occult, ritualistic power brokers would be coming around to collect the certain children for sacrifice to the occult gods, small g, of course. And they would dampen their fires to avoid detection. The big fire, the communal fire, is where the children would be sacrificed. And the more grotesque, the more worse sacrifice there was, pleased God, the gods, the more pleased the members of the occult. And again, sacrifice burned in fire. And you see, when it was all over, all of the village people who had dampened their fires and put out the fires to avoid detection so their children would not be taken, had to go into town to get an ember from the fire, or embers from the fire, to relight their own fires at their own home. And what did they do by doing that? They took part in this occult ritualistic program, the celebration of child sacrifice. Think now of the Olympic torch, of that on a larger and more recent scale. This is what we're seeing happening right now, these ritualistic events taking place. You might deny these occult and Illuminati holiday traditions. You might deny the significance that they have to us in the current realm. But you're not going to be denying it when our children and our grandchildren and the little children of the United States are going to be enslaved by the Chinese, by the people who will take over our country, by the people. You see, the leaders, the power elite, the bankers, they have sold their birthright. They've sold their children. They have sold our children and our children's birthright out for their fiat currency, their enrichment, personal enrichment. This is what this is all about. So you're looking at a number of things taking place. You're looking at, of course, the global reset of the economy, but behind it is that Illuminati, ritualistic, symbolic, occult twisted process, ritual. They're not only coming for us, they're not only coming for our resources, they're not only coming for our money, they're coming for our children, they're coming for our future. They're coming for the very people that we love and care for, and we're supposed to protect. Heck of a great job protecting them. That's not a it's not a slam against you folks at all. It's just the way it is. So when we talk about the rituals that we see in the Super Bowl, they're telling us what they're going to do. They're telling us what they're doing. When we see the rituals in the Olympics, they're telling us what they are going to do. Because as you heard over the last couple of days, Satan, who does not have an original thought, has got to play by certain rules and let you know the groundwork, let you know what's taking place. And that's why this is so important. That's why we talk about these dark days, the 13 days between April 19th and May 1st. Even though spring, of course, is just a great time of year, there's a darkness. And that darkness, that evil, is this full occult holiday between April 19th and May 1st, the 13 days. This 13-day span is some extremely important, a very important time. The sacrifice preparation, the kidnapping, the holding and ceremonial preparation of young people for human sacrifice. Folks, that's coming to this country. We can talk about it in the practical with the dead bankers. Oh, that's indeed part of it. That's a big part of it. We can talk about it with the global reset. That's a big part of it. But propelling this whole process is the satanic agenda. So, folks, I would urge everyone, and we'll do a program on this specifically on the Maypole celebration, the Beltane Festival. It's that important because you're talking about this druidic, which is ritualistic process, this druidic witch calendar. The May 1st, which is the Illuminati's second most sacred holiday, there's human sacrifice required. There is blood sacrifice required. You know, you think everything's a coincidence. It's interesting because remember World War II, Adolf Hitler killed himself on April 30th at 3:30 p.m., essentially creating a 333, placing a suicide sacrifice within the Beltane time frame. The Maypole celebration, of course, the Maypole originated from the celebration of Beltane. And fertility is being asked of the earth goddess. The Maypole is the phallic pyramid-shaped symbol, the obelisk symbol, the circular dance around it that the children do forms a circle that is symbolic of the female sex organ. Yes, I know it's hard to really get into this mentally. And you think, have you lost your senses, Doc? Because if I was talking like this 10 years ago, if I heard myself 10 years ago now, no, I just wouldn't believe it. But you see 4 6-foot alternating red and white ribbons that you see the children holding on to connected to the pole. The men dance counterclockwise. The ladies dance clockwise. The union of intertwining red and white ribbons symbolize the act of copulation. This is a fertility celebration day at the end of the blood sacrifice, the Beltane Festival. Folks, there are a lot of things happen between April 19th and April 30th. If you think about it, May 1st, April 19th and May 1st, a lot of important things that happened during that time period. Just look back in history. Hey, you can just go back in history and look at it. the bottom line here is there will be more banker deaths. Count on it. There will be more economic news that will not comport with the, or economic reality that will not comport with the news. Old Yellen, a play off Old Yeller, of course, took to the hot seat and slapped her mouth and made the stock market magically go up. And as long as the stock market, Joe, goes up, everything's okay, isn't it?
For financial people.
I didn't tell you this, but you want to know one of the biggest surprises I had when I was watching that clip?
What's that?
You'll never guess it.
Well,
one of the people seated behind, one of the men seated behind Yellen was in my house a year ago.
Who is that?
I'm not going to say his name.
You will, just not on air.
Correct.
Okay.
At any rate.
7 minutes left before the top of the hour. We're going to get into some news. As I will say this off air before the show, my father says, all right, we're going to hit the news hard this first hour. 53 minutes in.
I think that was important news, Joe. I don't know about you, but I think that people need to understand exactly how important this is and how critical this is, because the next thing that happens, I mean, we're going to be hit up a couple of things from this news. Economic disaster. You're going to lose your buying power, folks. It's coming. Whether you're ready for it or not, it's coming. There's going to be more, I'll tell you flat out right now, more bankers will be found dead under mysterious circumstances. And in all likelihood, there will be a mass blood sacrifice upcoming. And if that sounds pretty woo-woo-ish, or whatever some people want to say, just look at all of the evidence, whether anecdotal, circumstantial, indirect, whatever you want to call it, but look at, just consider what I said. But the purge of the bankers is not over. They're running scared. This is an agenda, and the people behind it want to silence as many people as possible. Folks, this is what this is all about. So you can listen to Chris Matthews and who's that, Yapper, Carnival Barker, Jim Cramer, and all of the Bloomberg and MSNBC money folk. And you know what? The bottom line is, it's all just propaganda.
Well, we do have some propaganda for you right now. Chris Matthews here in a minute and a half clip talks about the CBO report that we're going to get into in the last 5 minutes here after this clip. Here is Chris Matthews saying Republicans are using the CBO report as a way to rationalize their hate for Obama.
Welcome back to Hardball. In politics, it's one thing to spin, but it's another to do what the right wing's been doing, where it seems that each day they need a new permission slip to hate President Obama. We've seen it time and again from the far right. They hate first, then they come up with a way to rationalize their hatred. We're seeing it right now. They say that a new CBO report proves that the president's health care law will kill jobs. Speaker Boehner blasted out this message to constituents. CBO report confirms devastating impact of Obama on jobs. And the Senate Republican Campaign Committee followed suit. Obamacare to print even more pink slips. Well, the RNC twisted things even further. CBO, Obamacare is bad for economy. Well, the truth is the exact opposite. Here's Democratic Congressman Chris Van Hollen talking to the CBO director, its chief, Doug Elmendorf. He's the guy that wrote this report at a hearing yesterday.
CBO estimates that the ACA will boost overall demand for goods and services over the next few years. And then you go on to say the net increase in demand for goods and services will in turn boost demand for labor over.
All right, blah, 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 blah. More propaganda from MSNBC. But the CBO report, the CBO director today says there is a large and growing federal debt that could produce a fiscal crisis. On the same day, House Speaker John Boehner said he would bring in a clean debt ceiling bill to the House floor and joined Democrats in voting for a 13-month extension of the debt limit to head the Congressional Budget Office. The head of the Congressional Budget Office declared that the large and growing federal debt could eventually increase the risk of a fiscal crisis. I mean, did this guy just wake up and become alive today? This growing and large federal debt has been a problem for decades. And to say it could eventually increase the risk of a financial crisis is like saying the rowboat you're on could have a little rocking from the tidal wave that's about to hit it. It is just, they either think the American people are too stupid to understand what's going on, or are too preoccupied with their own little trinkets and toys to care. Goes on to say, the largest budget deficit recorded in recent years has substantially increased federal debt, and the amount of debt relative to the size of the economy is now very high by historical standards. At the same time this report comes out, we have reports, I'm looking for it here, the 1929, the Great Depression. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, how from David Wilkerson's book, where there were quotes from a few economists, top economists at the time, 2 days before the crash of 29, stating that the economy was in great shape and that the markets, the credit markets and everything was fine. There was no indication or warning of any types of problems, and everything was on the up and up. Obviously, 2 days later, we had the biggest stock market crash in our country's history. But anyway, it goes on to say the CBO estimates that federal debt held by the public will equal 74% of the GDP at the end of this year and 79% by 2024. Such a large and growing federal debt could have a serious negative consequence, including restraining economic growth in the long term, giving policymakers less flexibility to respond to unexpected challenges, and eventually increase the risk of a financial crisis in which investors would demand high interest rates to buy back government debt. And it just gets worse from here. It's just so crazy. We have the House voting to freeze the debt ceiling until 2015. Okay, you can freeze the debt ceiling per se, but just because you say it's frozen or it's not, the debt is not going up. Just like we had the record 100 and some days that the debt ceiling or the debt stayed the same this year or last year, the end of last year. And then all of a sudden, as soon as they passed the budget deal, we had the biggest day of spending in our history, some $66 billion or something along those lines. But here, today, scary, this from MarketWatch, 1929 market crash gains traction. This is the least, okay, here we go. There is an eerie parallel between the stock market reaction behavior and how it behaved right before the crash in 1929. That, at least, is the conclusion reached by a frightening chart that has been making the rounds on Wall Street. The chart superimposes the market's recent performance on top of a plot of its 1928 and 1929 trajectory. The picture isn't pretty, and it's not as easy as you might think to wiggle out from underneath the bearish significance of this chart. He goes on to say, I should know because I quoted a number of the chart skeptics in a column I wrote in this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Stan Deo will be calling in any moment now, and until he does, I'm going to jump on this IRS rules change that we didn't get a chance to get to in the first hour. Mitch McConnell backs a bill to curb proposed IRS rules on free speech. To boil this down, the IRS has proposed new regulations the day after Thanksgiving that would prevent groups seeking 501c4 status, tax-exempt status. They call these social welfare. This is social welfare status. It is going to limit them from. First of all, they're going to allow them to keep their donors private. It's going to limit them from running television ads. It's going to limit or deny them the ability to organize and get the vote out, doing voter registration drives, or handing out literature on any political issue. Now, some of these groups, and they're calling these the IRS secret police. What they're doing here is using what we all know about this 501c3 church status, and what that does to limit what churches can or cannot say. But this is last year, the IRS admitted it had been targeting conservative groups who applied for this tax-exempt status is signified with labels, singled out groups with labels like Patriot, Tea Party, 912 in their names, putting them through ridiculous screening processes that left the groups in limbo for years. And we'll get into this more in the third hour. But now we are joined by, as my dad calls, the real Indiana Jones, the one and only Mr. Standeo from Standeo.com. He is a guest every Tuesday here in the second hour. And Stan, it's great to have you back on the show.
Good to be back. A few things happening out there. I don't know what you guys have covered already today, but the world seems to be moving right along toward chaos, especially the United States.
Yeah.
Yes, and welcome to the program, Stan. I just dominated the first hour with talk about the economic collapse, the dead bankers, the mystery behind them, and moving into China, buying up land here, and also the significance of Beltane and the Maypole celebration. So that kind of covers the first hour.
Oh, kind of the good news section of the program.
the kind of research after I was doing it today that I wanted to climb into bed, pull the bedspread over my head, and just stay there.
Understood. Tell you what, Holly and I feel that way at times, and it's kind of why we've cut the website out for about a couple of weeks here, because after 13 or 14 years of doing this every day, well, at least 6 days a week, it's absolutely drained her, and of course me as well, but not as bad, because I don't have to get up at 4:30 and start collecting the good news, as it were, around the planet. But things are escalating so rapidly now that we're just talking to a lot more people that are emailing and phoning and stuff, suddenly realizing that, we weren't crazy. All of us that have been talking about, the sky is falling type stuff. And there are more of them kind of really getting seriously concerned about the state of the world.
And with good reason. As we see, as you said, things just continuing to spiral out of control. I'm reading and going through what you sent here on Skype, Stan, and you have first thing you put in here is the earthquakes, last 7 days of earthquakes.
Right. Interesting. The last 7 days of earthquakes around the planet continue as normal in the southwest part of the Ring of Fire, big quakes over there. But I've been particularly interested in the U.S. map, which is what I sent you there, because it is outlining areas of weakness that are starting to shake in the United States. Up in near Seattle there, in Portland, in Oregon and Washington State, which is inland a bit from the Juan de Fuca plate, but it's certainly right over the top of the Cascadia subduction zone, or like a deep earthquake zone, and it's active. Not, the earthquakes aren't like 4s and 5s, but there's a whole cluster of them up there, which I'm keeping an eye on, as well as those over near the center of Oklahoma, there near Oklahoma City. Those are magnitude-wise stronger than the ones up in the Washington and Oregon area. And, of course, in my favorite place down there at the Salton Sea, down at the very top of the Gulf of California, up inland, just, near San Diego and that area, there are quakes happening there, which are part of a continuing pattern going all the way up from Los Angeles right up into Salt Lake City. Now, I don't know. I don't think I sent you the current situation over at Yellowstone, but there are a lot of little quakes occurring there, right where I have been talking about, in the northwest corner of the park. And I do believe that we need to watch it. It's a very small, tight area where the earthquakes are happening, but these are right close to where the new vent, the possible eruption point might be for Yellowstone whenever it starts to go. It's in a pretty dynamic area of the park. You can see from all the mountains and rivulets that formed in the past ages when ash fell from it. But it's if you go to the earthquakes.volcanodiscovery.com and get to the map in Yellowstone, you'll see what I'm talking about. But that's the reason I sent that earthquake report, is because I think things are starting to become interesting on a global scale as far as areas that haven't seen a lot of heavy earthquake activity in a long time, and we're now starting to see them cluster. I mean, even down in Puerto Rico, down that area, you'll see on the map that there's a cluster of quakes around there in the last 7 days. Yeah. I'm just seeing a pattern forming, and I'm certainly keeping an eye on it. But thought I'd share that with your listeners and those in the chat room.
Yeah, one thing that concerns me here, looking at your map, is, and I'm pulling up the USGS right now and go to the last 7 days here, all magnitudes, and we'll check out the U.S. here. You have, and in your picture, there is an earthquake, it looks like right on the Ohio-Pennsylvania border. And then there's two up in upstate New York. Is this where the New Madrid fault line would be? And it looks like down right by Memphis, there's another little quake.
One at Memphis, yeah, that would be right in the heart of the New Madrid area. The ones up in New York are part of another fault line that was only discovered in the last 3 or 4 years, running underneath the Appalachians and up toward Montreal. So they're associated with that one more than with the New Madrid. Not to say they're any less threat, but just simply that they're a different zone.
Okay, I was not sure if those would be connected to the New Madrid fault line, and it looks pretty, almost like it would be in line with where that goes, but and we see that swarm in Puerto Rico. I see they're still very active too.
Yeah, well, this, the Atlantic is a bit of a growing mystery. The Spanish scientific teams in the last 2 years have been warning about a new plate tectonic border, like a fracture forming in the north to central Atlantic. Now, when I see Puerto Rico acting up like this, with the number of quakes it's getting in clusters, I'm wondering if this is a side effect of the formation of this new tectonic plate, and that it's happening quicker than the Spanish seismologists predicted. I mean, they're talking long-term scales like, thousands of years and stuff, but we've just seen anomalous things on the thermal charts and the earthquake charts that I've done in the past on the Atlantic, and they form a line from the Bahamas and Florida, and it kind of does a jag near Puerto Rico and then over into the northwest part of Africa, just south of the Canary Islands, where we have the Cumbre de Vieja situation there. And I'm just seeing, like I say, thermal patterns, changes in sea surface temperature at depths off the northwest coast of Africa that do concern me, thinking this is not going to take thousands of years for this plate border to form. I have my suspicions about the seismic activity or pressures that may be forming off the New England coast of the United States as well, from Virginia Beach up in toward Montreal. There are just subtle little things that I can't put my finger on exactly, that I just feel from what I'm seeing is that area certainly may experience some seismic activity in the near future, probably, coupled with the orbital proximity of the moon and its orbit around the Earth, and with the activity on the sun as far as coronal mass ejections and flares that might be throwing stuff at us and putting electromagnetic or electrodynamic pressures inside the planet. Just really, it's kind of neat to be watching all this, but scary at the same time.
Yes, it is, and it's interesting to see how these Earth changes are escalating. You know, we talk about this a lot, about how God sends his signals and messages in different ways, and we talk about, you know, how what Jesus said when he was here, how earthquakes and earth changes would increase, and catastrophes, calamities, hurricanes, all these things would continue to increase during the birth pains. And I mean, it seems like it can't get any worse, you know. But
oh yeah,
it just, as my dad said, it feels as though there is something right around the corner that is serious in nature, to the point where, you know, it's going to affect all of us, and we all get these feelings. But at least for me today, that feeling has just been burdening me all day. I don't know about you, but and how or what will take place. But it feels like something is really coming around the corner, and it's coming hard and fast, and it's going to affect us all, and we need to be prepared for this.
I think this is, you know, this kind of premonition type phenomenon that has been reported in the past, you know, among groups of humans, is that they will sense a clear and present danger between them. Without knowing what exactly it is, they will start to be on guard or defensive, you know, looking for what's happening. And this produces some strange behaviors in these clusters of humans. Nervousness, agitation, in other words. In some cases, sicknesses. They're more prone to viral and bacterial illnesses. People become more cranky, and marriages break up in modern times more frequently during these periods of threat. And that's the psychological effects that attend these things. But a number of reports of the last 2 or 3 years have been studying the behavior of human children in the modern world, and the gene structure of these new children is such that they are exhibiting not only higher IQs and higher inventive, indices, but they're also exhibiting some, I guess, what you might call, telepathy about events happening around it. Like they can sense, like animals can, when these earthquakes or volcanoes or other things are about to happen. How that works, I'm not sure, but it's been interesting reading and viewing that I've been doing the last couple of weeks looking at this. I have a pet theory about the human genome anyway, all the genetic structures of living things on Earth. And that is that at their inception, when these things were created by our Creator, that the double helix strand and the genes over there and the sub-genetic mitochondrial structures, whatever, all these things were set like in a spring that's coiled, and it will gradually uncoil and spin out, as generation to generation passes. The next generation, the spring opens up a bit, and more activity happens between the genes that would not have happened in earlier generations of living things, particularly humans we're looking at. And we're now approaching a time where the children of this age are exhibiting massive differences in their parents as far as being able to, their cognitive functions and their sensory perceptions, and it's been in some cases reported being able to move small objects with their mind. This came from reports in China, experiments they were doing over there in the last 15 years. So, yes, I think something is around the corner. They're just, I don't know, today I felt like a heaviness in my spirit and my body, just, almost like a aimlessness, if I can point in that direction. Was that something like you were feeling?
Yeah, just in my spirit, just a burden, almost like a feeling, it's just like your dog is lost, that something's wrong, something's off, and you need to fix it, but you just, in this case, you don't know what's wrong or what you got to do to fix it.
Yeah. Look, I guess, over the last, 20 years or so, a number of us have been early harbingers of these things and trying to get people all over the world to prepare as best they can, prepare their families and their businesses for, a loss of, say, grid energy sources for them, gasoline, petroleum type things, and also electric grids. Just knowing that things are heading in a direction which is unusual. And I do try to intersperse reading interesting news or seeing videos in scientific developments and in reports on the weather and humans and whatever. I sent you some of those links. I try to take my mind off of the dreary part and look at some of the neat parts that humans are doing. I sent you a link on a digital printer for computers that prints in 3D with a really good range of colors, so you can print almost any color, and it's not released to the public yet. But that link shows you that, and the reason I did that was because it reminded me of something that I did as part of a research project with an orthopedic surgeon down in Perth, probably, about 30 years ago. And at that time, he had a case which he had a twin pair, like twin boys that were coming to him for a treatment because one of them had increasing pains in the left side of his body, his leg and his arm, and stiffness of the neck on that side. And come to find out that these twins performed in a circus act where they did some extreme acrobatics, and one of it required the other one, the brother that didn't have the symptoms, to, in essence, hold a strap which was around his brother's neck, and he would spin him. And so, obviously we knew that something was wrong in his spine, but they were having problem. They wanted to image this, and this is before the days of nuclear magnetic resonance and, NMRs, that kind of stuff. And the surgeon was going to have to go in and, get in there and find something that was broken and either extract it or, repair it as best he could in situ. Everybody suspected that there was a broken bone or something in this kid's neck. Well, they started taking, at that time we had CAT scans, and so they came to me and said, look, we know you work in graphics and television 3D stuff. Can you write a little program to put together these slices of this boy's neck in that area there so we can see where we have to push and where we have to be careful of? Because once we open up the back and get into the spine, there's not enough light down there when it bleeds a bit. We don't want our instruments to touch this little 1 millimeter diameter artery that runs through his spine, through internal spine, because if we touch it with an instrument that's colder than the ambient temperature by just a couple of degrees, the artery collapses and freezes and squeezes down and cuts off the blood flow to all the rest of the spine below that, and then it paralyzes the person from that point down. So it was an interesting project, and I did write the program, and they took very small slices of the spine in that area, bang, 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 and then I put them together into a 3D model, and this is 30 years ago, and so we could rotate it in the computer and see from all angles what was happening in that boy's spine, and we found a ruptured surface inside the spinal column there on a membrane that was allowing it to bleed into the cavity there and to produce an increasingly hardening type mass there from the blood and the blood serum that was left there. Anyway, they were able to see that and operate in a safe manner and save the boy. Now, here, 30 years later, so I'm looking at this full color 3D printer and watching it. You can see that video there, how it builds up little bits and pieces layer by layer until it has something built in 3D that you couldn't make on a machine, because this is doing it in slices so it can show cavities and everything. And it would be wonderful if we could apply that technology, making a 3D image of a person's spine, where the nerves have been, impeded by arthritis or by injury, calcium buildups, whatever. And I just think that, here we are on the verge of this now, about to be a very good thing to help a lot of people by imaging like this, and we're about to blow up the planet at the same time. But this is some of the kind of cool and good news that hopefully will be of use sometime, until the good Lord can come back here and, with a wave of a hand, make things repair. Just an interesting little thing that I picked up and thought, wow, I'll share this with your listeners because I just think it's cool. Anyway.
Interesting. Stan, I saw this report, and the ICE experts, this is the main headline on Drudge right now. Ice experts predict Lake Superior will completely freeze over this winter, and apparently this hasn't happened for over 20 years. Is there any significance to this? I mean, I understand Lake Superior is humongous. It's the biggest of all the Great Lakes. But for this to be a main headline on Drudge, is this anything to even concern ourselves with?
Well, I guess, not having read the article, is it saying that the entire surface will freeze, or just a percentage of it, or what?
It says that, well, first of all, there's a Great Lakes ice expert that says there's a very high likelihood that it will be totally covered with ice, thanks to the winter's record-breaking cold.
Well, all right. I don't know that I'd heard that it ever frozen over like in recorded history, but I know it's gotten close in the past. Yeah, I don't know how close, but probably over 90% for sure. But
91%. You were almost right on the money there. February 5th, 1994. 91% covered.
Okay. All right. Now, we do see here in Colorado, and I suppose a number of other places, that there are 20-year cyclic patterns in droughts and rainfall. But what we have been seeing in the last year is changes in climate rather than just weather, where it's a persisting temperature change and persisting type storms that are moving to different places on the planet. And, it doesn't sound like global warming when the Great Lakes are freezing over. The Lake Superior, obviously, it's lower down. It should be warmer. Well, what I'm thinking is that we have an extreme in the climate where we have extreme cold and wet versus extreme heat and drought, and those traditional patterns are moving. And in this case, I'm not sure where over the Great Lakes where that pattern is moving, but I do think that saying that okay, we're at 90-some-odd% coverage already in Lake Superior, that this might be moving further south into the United States, and of course affecting from Maine right on down into Virginia and Pennsylvania for those of you that are in that area.
Yeah, but what they're saying here is, and I guess further reading of this article, they're saying that this person who is a studier of ice on the Great Lakes says it will have a very strong influence on the regional climate this summer with the air conditioning lake effect. And it says typically the lake will start warming up in late June, but it will be August before we see that this year. And we know here, as we live, less than a few miles from Lake Erie, that the lake has a huge effect on the weather when it comes to storms coming through. We have lake effect snow. We have, cooler temperatures closer to the lake as the lake is colder or warming up. It does affect the climates locally. So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I guess if this Lake Superior freezes over, they're saying, it's probably not going to be able to swim in it this summer, unless we have a warmer summer.
Well, I think that we have to look at serious effects of it in relation to crops, in relation to businesses that depend on the traditional patterns of heating and cooling in the area. What is concerning me is that this is indicative of the North Polar weather drifting down more into the United States. I'm wondering if it's something as an artifact of when we had the Ice Age, the last Ice Age, and there was a wandering of the North Pole, because we know in physics that when you use electricity to go from one pole of a battery to another through say water, it will move heat from one portion or one electrode of the battery to the other one. So you can use electricity to move temperature. So looking at the Earth with electric currents flowing from the core up through the polar regions and back down in toward the equator and then back into the inside of the planet, when the internal magnetic field which generates our electric currents inside the Earth, when that starts to drift off of its traditional north-south pole like we've known, and we know that's happening over the last 3 or 4 years, it's become very obvious. When that happens, it's going to take the thermionic, or the thermal temperature change, due to electric current flow. It's going to take the ambient cooling with it off of the North Pole and down to where the new spin center of our internal, generator that's generating, the electric field of the Earth is pointed. And that's what I'm concerned about. I do see that the evidence of that now moving over your area there, and it may stop and zigzag back toward Europe or Russia or whatever. But it's this wandering North Pole, and like the polar vortices, these things are becoming part of the news, and it's the quantity and the severity of that we have to watch. We may well still enter into a global warming condition around the new equator, wherever that is, where it's going to be. But we will see a massive disparity of temperatures, cold and hot, and this will create massive weather machines that are like super tornadoes, super hurricanes, super drought, super freezing rain and stuff. And I've talked about it coming for years, and doggone it, it's here. We're seeing the massive climate changes and the extremes. I'm sorry that it's hitting the United States like this, but it's also hitting other countries in the same manner, including Russia and all kinds of places.
And
Australia.
Isn't it quite a coincidence that it's hitting at a time when, the economies of the world are in recession and pretty much some of the worst possible conditions they could be in, right? And the drought you talked about, the headline from a few days ago from Market Watch, Western drought spells killer grocery bills. Spring wheat planting is the next concern, and they're saying, much like the polar vortex spiked demand and prices in natural gas in the eastern U.S., another weather phenomenon, a severe drought, is threatening cattle, milk production, and food crops in the West. And they say that this threat can last for months or years, depending on the conditions, and drive up prices on milk and cattle futures.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to repair when you lose millions of head of cattle, like down in Texas and in other states as well, in the Southwest. When you lose those from a current, livestock asset value, it takes years to build the herds back up again. They don't just happen next season when things get better. In our local area here in Colorado, we've been seeing in the wildlife changes. For instance, there are cycles of too many rabbits, and that's followed by cycles of too many coyotes to eat them. And we're seeing extremes of that this year, where the coyotes are lean and hungry and there aren't many rabbits around. When those two come together, it's not good, for the environment. But food prices are going to go through the roof starting now. They're starting to escalate now in the United States, and I'm sure in Europe and most of the developed economies will see this. And we are all going to be in a 2 to 3 to 4 year depression, food depression, and price escalation, inflation because of this. It just won't repair immediately, and we see it happening now. So we know that we're in for several years of heartache, and with the unemployment like it is, people are going to go hungry and get very irritable.
Absolutely, and you're seeing the price to feed the cows, the going up, the price of feed going up. It's just spiraling out of control. And I wonder how long until we see what some people predicted. A lot of people predict, there's going to be an economic collapse and rioting will instantly ensue and all the stores will be wiped out, the food will be wiped off all the shelves. But my dad has said that there could be stores full of food and not the money or to buy them. People will not have the money to buy them.
No, that's when they'll riot. They'll come to steal it because it's, my family's got to eat, they'll say, and, if it's there and the powers that be have made it so I can't afford it, I'm going to steal it. I'll take it. And this is where, surprise, surprise, the established government of the United States particularly will say, look, we found a use for these billions of rounds of bullets we bought. We'll control the situation for you, and everything will be okay. But if you try to steal from us, we'll kill you.
Yeah. Did you see the report today from InfoWars? Homeland Security purchased 141,000 rounds of sniper ammo.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah, I mean, that means they're going to be hiding off somewhere to hit you. I mean, well, we were looking at things to talk about here on the show this afternoon, Holly and I. I guess it was probably around 2:30 or somewhere in that area. We were wrapping some packages of books to send out to people, and I heard this whoom, 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 and it was this low helicopter coming over the house again. And that happens. And so I noticed it, and we kept on working and talking, and about an hour later, we hear and come right over the house so low it just sounded weird. It was not the normal helicopter sound. And I joked with her. I said, I guess they're mapping to see where we are. Maybe some of those sniper rounds will catch us. I don't know. But while we went to the barber shop together, we went to the same one as last week on Wednesday, and we came out and we're about 2:30 in the afternoon again, and this drone came over. First one I've ever seen, right over the top of us. And it was probably one of those, 20, 30-foot drones. But it's getting busy. It's spooky.
Stan, did you happen to see, I'm going back here a little bit in the conversation, in Georgia, the empty shelves in that grocery store ahead of the snowstorm?
They're going to have an ice storm there.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. I could believe it. It just kind of punctuates what you've been saying about really people don't appear to be prepared. Normal, everyday people don't appear to be prepared.
I call that somewhat psychotic behavior, because they were cleaning those shelves, and when people start throwing canned Brussels sprouts into their basket, I worry for them.
Yeah, not my first choice, but okay.
Yeah, but I mean, down in Florida where they have hurricanes every year, right? People still go crazy when they get word of a big one coming, and you'd think that they wouldn't be caught like that they'd have, larders that were stocked with stuff, months ahead of time, and generators and things to take care of them. But no, just like you said there, they do the same thing in Florida. They'll clean the shelves and they'll buy everything. And, there are a lot of foods out there that they would probably never, ever think about eating, but they'll put it in their basket just to be prepared in an emergency, because it's on top of them, instead of, doing it, the leisure way a long time ahead of time with buying stuff that you like to eat. Anyway, it's just silliness.
Stan, I was talking to, if I can go here at this point, I was talking to somebody before the show, and we were talking about the potential deception, especially for the Christians, but for the world in general. What do you think about? And I'm trying to go back to the conversation. He said perhaps you can address and I think you have in the past, but with our conversation as we have taken it from last week through this week through our different shows, it seems like we're prepared, or we're being prepared for a pretty large deception to take place, and I would say through the use of technology, that's going to fool a lot of people. It's going to be alien centered, and I know you've talked about this. We've talked about this before, but can you just readdress that for our new listeners?
Okay, if you want to look at this from a dispassionate point of view, a non-religious, non-political point of view, stand back and look at the planet Earth as a member of, let's say, some of the richer families that run governments around the Earth. When you look at the Earth as a whole entity, it has a population of humans, among other things, but a population that needs to be ordered and brought together so that we can build a harmonic system where our consumption of the resources around us does not exceed the supply of the resources around us, whether it be food or energy or whatever. And you would stand back and look at this and you'd say, okay, now what we really need to do is get people of the planet, not so much the leaders, but the people, to agree to setting up a global system, a global community where we share, the same dollar currency, whatever it is, and where we use the same kind of technologies across the board, and where education is uniform, and we treat ourselves as a big super state so that we can have the chance to save ourselves from ourselves, to order the consumptive demands and whatever. Okay, now this kind of a discussion went on back in the late 40s in the United States. And there were a number of leaders at the time that people didn't know openly that were involved in this group. And they said, okay, look, nice idea, but look at what's happened to the League of Nations. It failed. The United Nations was failing even back then in the late 40s and early 50s. People of 2 or 3 countries out of the 196 member nations, 2 or 3 countries could not agree on a simple thing between them, much less all 196 countries agreeing on various laws or changes. There was no teeth to the legislation that could happen at the United Nations. So the planners, and you and I pretending we're the planners, we'd say, okay, we need to fool people into accepting a new global order long enough for them to see this is what they really need to save themselves from themselves. Obviously, we can't do it like Hitler tried to do it by force, because people will break free of that, and there will be grassroots resistance, and eventually there'll be chaos and tribes, groups, forms, and it won't be stable. And obviously, the United Nations is not working because we're trying to get people to agree, to form this government. So we've got to fool the people of Earth into accepting a trial system, and so that we can have a global government and avoid war and the misuse of technologies that are like nuclear and things like that. And this has to be done soon. So how do we do it? Now, we're not talking aliens or anything else. We're talking about just practical circumstances. We know we can't force people into a one-world government. We know we can't coerce them into it, but we can fool them. We can trick them. The United Nations is like a form of coercion. I mean, it could be persuasion, whatever word you want to use. But they thought the third alternative 3, would be to create the arrival of a new world government that is not connected to any religion, not connected to any political structure, and has no drum to beat, and it appears to be neutral, coming to all of the countries and the peoples of those countries and saying, look, here we are. We've come from, some distant star somewhere, and we're offering you a model of government that will work on a planetary scale and unify you and save you from yourself and the wars between your countries and religious beliefs and things like that. Now, that's, a hypothetical thing. So back in the 50s, you say, well, how could we convince people of Earth that, the masses, that a third party, a third alternative from off the planet is coming in, and it really has no drum to beat because it doesn't belong to any government? Well, we'd say, we need to develop technology and hide it from the people of Earth long enough for us to generate technology so far in advance of what they think is real and possible that it will appear to be magic and extraterrestrial in origin and that kind of stuff. Now, these conversations did take place. That's real. And if we were sitting in that group at that time, just after World War II and seeing the atom bomb used, it would be an urgent discussion between us, trying to figure out how to save ourselves from such a thing again. Now, that means you need to dumb down the people. You need to block development of technologies and streams of technology that would interfere with creating this pseudo group of beings from off the planet to announce their presence and their presence to help us form this one world government. Now that went well. In reality, that started back late 40s, early 50s, but way early in the game, surprise, surprise, real kind of extraterrestrial type beings, whether they be automaton, gray robotic things, or tall, Nordic, handsome-looking people, whatever it was, met with us, and with the United States and Russia and who was Germany, what was left of Germany, and Australia, United Kingdom, Canada. These meetings were to make a deal with mankind to provide this technology and this arrival of these alleged extraterrestrials so that the humans didn't have to do it. It was already a fait accompli. They had technology thousands of years ahead of us. And in turn, they needed certain things, as genetic studies they wanted to do on humans and animals, and allow that to happen and don't let the public know that they're here officially. And that really did happen as well. Now, when you put our leaders of the planet at that time with their desire to fool the people of Earth into a one-world government for their own good, with the arrival, coincidentally, of these alleged alien beings and their super technology to do exactly the same thing the humans want to do, when you put those two together, it makes a dangerous combination, especially since we don't know, or didn't know at the time, the true intent of these alleged extraterrestrial beings. Now, they are here. I mean, I don't know that I have met one or any of them. I did work in a program that got technology from them, but having not even seen them, I do understand that they are here and manipulating things on the earth right now. It's just the same as a person having faith in Jesus Christ being who he is and what he did for us without ever having seen him. You see the signs of these things and understand the wisdom of them. And this is what's about to happen now. We're going to have a fake return of the Messiah, a fake return of the Mahdi, a fake return of the Buddha. All this is going to be rolled into one super being who will give his support to a human on the earth to establish and run a one-world government. And the people of Earth are being herded into accepting that willingly, because they're going to see threats from food shortages, weather and climate changes, meteor and asteroid impacts, solar problems with the sun's emissions, change in the Earth's core and the magnetic field switch, and all these kind of things, diseases, are all being ramped up right now to force the people of Earth, no matter what country they're from, saying, can anyone stop this? Can anyone bring us an answer to bring the planet back into control? Can we bring peace? Also the threat of nuclear war. I forgot about that in the Middle East. And this is going, this pre-advertising of our situation by the media controlled by the global planet is going to just hand us over to the first super race that comes to Earth, or allegedly from some other star system, to help us. And I caution people saying that this is spoken of by Daniel the prophet, it's spoken of in the Book of the Revelation of John, or to John, it's spoken of in Matthew 23. Watch out for the first guy that comes, or being that comes, saying that he is our Messiah, our Creator, and that he created us through genetic manipulation, and we are his children in essence, and he's here to help us organize ourselves and join the federation of planets and stars and whatever out there. Beware of the first one coming, posing as a messenger of light, an angel of light, and promising the world, kind of like Obama did in the last election and one before that. And don't be fooled by that, because whoever that being is, they will lead you down a path to darkness and to death. Even though they will say, "Look, we're your friends. If you want to keep your health insurance you got now, you can." But it will be a lie on a global scale, and people will fall for it because they haven't accepted the fact that we've been warned about this by Jesus Christ himself. It is so clever. It is such a clever deception that when it starts to happen, it'll be too late for you to say to your friend, your neighbor who isn't a believer yet, "Oh, don't believe this. This is rotten." They're saying good things, but they're really lying.
Yeah.
It'll be impossible.
With the generation of kids and young adults now having went through the early stages of life with God phased out of the curriculum and being, taken out of even from being mentioned in the school systems, and basically a joke on TV and ridiculed and mocked. We can see how this would not only be embraced, but how then easily it would be to turn on those people who believe in Jesus and to say this is the problem.
You know, I don't own stock in Kenneth Johnson's V series, you know, V like for Victor, the movie or the books, but I promote his work because I feel it has an underlying Christian viewpoint, the author's viewpoint, which was put into secular terms into a fictional movie and eventually into a series, but the movie was the important one, to warn people about aliens coming to Earth with, you know, great gifts and intentions and peace, love, and harmony, give you technology. Oh, if you let us have some of your salt water, we need it on our planet. The whole V movie is really a disguised warning about the great deception that the Bible warns us about. And I promise you, if you get that as a Christian believer, hire it or buy it from, you know, Walmart or whatever on a DVD and watch it through and see the Christian parallels and prophetic parallels in this movie. Get that, and then have movie nights with friends or relatives that aren't believers and start dropping the hints during the movie. Oh, that's in the Bible, such and such thing. The dehydrated blood from a human and alien crossbred child. It's the blood that saved the planet from the bad guys, and there's bad guys and there's good guys, and that kind of a thing. I have done that many times in the past with, you know, friends and relatives, and just awaken their minds by letting them see the fictional account in a secular tone, but then showing them the undercurrent and what it really means. It's a great witness tool anyway. I mean, there's probably others, but I couldn't stress more that this is something to be concerned with, and we're not going to beat. They haven't made the last movie, and I don't know whether they ever will, particularly because it shows what the Bible's talking about. But the last movie of the V series should be based on Kenneth Johnson's last book, a movie that shows the Earth people resisting, you know, the alleged creators and good guys, these aliens that were really serpents in disguise. It shows them, the serpents, overtaking and beating our underground resistance groups, so we just could not, you know, keep them away, even though we held them off, you know, with this powdered blood extract. It was meant to run them off. It would kill them. And they got around that. And in the end, it looked like Earth's population was doomed to be possessed and controlled by this, serpent-based or reptile-based race. And in the third book of his series, which is not movie yet, it allows for the great creator and his race to come and get rid of these reptilian interlopers and to save mankind and to bring an age of peace. But obviously that wouldn't fit the conditioning that Hollywood wants to put upon the world and that the planners wants to put upon the people of the world. So that book has not been made into a movie, but the intent in that book is there to show people that there is a true creator coming, a good guy, on the heels of the bad one that comes and tries to destroy humanity.
So, Stan, by the way, that was a very compelling and very articulate explanation. But looking at this, and I'm trying to envision the situation, the environment, the conditions, and the response. And I think everyone knows, has a neighbor, a friend, a relative that I'm sure would fall for, or would be sucked in by such an event, this fictitious event. What would their response? And I keep going back in my mind to that 1960, 61, I believe it is, Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man, when the aliens came down, and and of course it was a cookbook, but nonetheless, there appeared, at least in that episode, to be some harmonious level of cooperation among man, among people and their neighbors, if I recall that episode correctly. I don't see this taking place because you're going to have a body that, for example, our listeners to our alternative media that are going to know what's happening and not be fooled, but yet you're going to have the bulk of the world or others completely entranced or complicit, will there be civil strife? I mean, obviously there's going to be disagreement, but...
Well, think about this, and sorry, not to jump in front of Stan here, but when the way I see this happening is there's going to be what we see with the Arab Spring. There's going to be chaos across the world to the point where people, just like when we say, people will be begging for order to be restored.
But in this case, but see, Stan and Joe, in this case, the way I look at it is you're not going to be able to be sitting at, we'll say, a Wednesday church potluck dinner and have one person saying, oh, that's just a bunch of hooey, and the other person saying, oh, no, I believe it. To me, this would have to be much more absolute, and it would really have to upset probably it doesn't even do justice, but it would really have to affect the psyche of both sides, of the believers versus the absolute believers that this is the real thing, and those who are deceived versus the people who are saying, wait a minute, look, I heard this before. Stan Dale talked about this. We can't be, jumping in here. But I see this turning into this. It's almost like a civil war, or if
there's going to be a lot of people being quiet. I mean, those of us who understand what's happening will be probably afraid to speak out openly. It'll be underground type meetings because we will be the enemy. We will be treated as terrorists of a nature by the New World Order or the New Planetary Order. Remember the Godfather. They're going to make us an offer we can't refuse. And basically people will be frightened not to accept it, but glad to accept it because it promises peace, love, and harmony and no unfair treatment of anyone by gangs or any of that kind of stuff. So it's an offer that the majority of the planet cannot afford to refuse. And it's a mafia joke, type thing, but it's really what we're looking at. They are going to make us an offer we can't refuse. And fear is going to be one motive, the driving force, because obviously the aliens could kill us, destroy us, serve us as food. I mean, a lot of scenarios have been presented like you were saying. But on the other hand, they could be our Messiah, and could bring us peace, love, and harmony. And so what have you got to lose? What way they kill you, what way they don't, and they give you great things. All together there, it makes take the offer. And people that don't take the offer, like us, that are warning about this, will be looked upon as, what are you, an idiot? It's an offer you can't refuse. It's a win-win. So there'll be that component thrown in there too, Doug. In the church meetings, they will ostracize you, and eventually, I'm sure, legally, the New Order will put a lot of us to death if we're still here.
Understood. Okay, and that's, to me, that interests me, that dynamic that will exist at that given time, and I've got no doubt that this is what is being planned, as you said. And the other thing too, it just amazes me the depth of planning. Stan, do you look at, for example, Roswell as being maybe the modern day equivalent of the beginning of conditioning the public for what's about to take place, or what's down the road here on the horizon with this deception?
I think Roswell was for Satan being behind it. Yes, it was the beginning of the deception for mankind. For the humans involved in the planned New World Order and the deception to form all that was the trigger to get the human component to start talking about, we need to do something like this. We need to have real aliens and stuff to, in a fake landing, if we can't find real aliens, to unify the planet. So in one essence, it certainly was the precursor conditioning effect. But before Roswell, there were things like in Madame Blavatsky's, stuff with witchcraft and the supernatural dark sides of things, and tracing or using Kabbalah in government and various other places. These were even an earlier precursor to get people conditioned and driving the herd of us into a particular gate in the paddock so that we would just run right into where they're channeling us, literally channeling us, I guess. But the UFO side of it, the flying saucer side, humankind jumped on that boat at Roswell, and after that, I'm sure there have been planned events, flyovers, the Phoenix Lights, the Florida Lights, abductions by the Wazoo. These things have been planned and put into place to drive the human herd to a particular conclusion or state of mind. Whether Roswell is real or not, it was the beginning of these things as far as the human involvement.
Yeah, and they've been very successful. And Stan, we're at the top of the hour. Before we let you loose, I got to ask you, in Skype here, you put the full 3D printer. Sounds too good to be true, is it? Can you explain a little bit about this 3D printer and how?
Oh, sorry. I guess I mentioned that a bit earlier about being able to reproduce things, but now if you want to make a complicated object, to sell or to put on your mantle or whatever, let's say you want to make a ball with hollow parts to it that are not seen from the outside, but the outside of the ball is solid. Say like Earth with voids inside of it. Falling short of creating half of a ball with these voids and the other half with matching parts to those voids and gluing it together somehow, we can't make that. But with a 3D printer, it takes that ball and it generates a digital representation of that ball in layers going from the ground up, say from the South Pole, that ball up to the north. It's slices that are taken parallel to the equator going from the bottom up to the top, so that these slices, when you generate one layer of them, they'll have, say, a circle or some odd-shaped void in that one layer, which will be a part of a whole cavern inside that ball. But you won't see it as a 3D printer is building it. You'll see it. You'll see the voids forming, and then as it goes up toward the North Pole of that ball, it will close off those layers and then make a solid surface. And when it's finished, this 3D printer, which has been using a kind of resin which sets very quickly and becomes hard, it has built a ball that is virtually seamless. It hadn't been glued together, it's a half of one carved out and a half of the other carved out. It has been created with a zillion little layers coming up from the bottom to the top, and each of these layers, such fine layers of dots that are being melted onto the layer that was just before that, it allows you to make this ball as a solid object without machine tooling. It is just simply built up, and that's why I was talking about the spinal thing that I worked on years ago, is because I wish we'd have had one of these then, so that we could have built up the 3D image of that spine in real terms, so we could hold it and feel it and see where the calcifications were, where the scar tissue was, or where a nerve was being impinged. And it makes it a lot easier for the surgeons or the robots that are going to be doing the work to relate from this 3D model to the live person and repair the damage. Anyway, it's just it's a fascinating thing, and 3D printers are going to be really like replicators on Star Trek. You're going to have a digital model of something in sliced layers, and it'll build it up, bing, 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 like that, and there you've got something. And eventually, allowed to proceed to its conclusion, such a printer or a 3D builder type thing like this printer would be able to take molecules down at that level, piece them together to make an exact replica of anything that you want, food, people. Until that time, we'll have to be satisfied with the powers that be generating holographic 3D images of, say, a president or a world leader, and place him in any environment they want on TV and whatever, and people will believe it's the real person talking. That is possible now without even making a solid body. So we have to deal with just that at the moment, not the real, true dimensional cloning or physical cloning of objects. The replicator is not an impossible concept. It really isn't. We can see it coming.
Jeez. Who would have thought? I mean, I certainly would not have thought we'd be talking about this kind of stuff in 2014. Even I don't know, a dozen years ago. It's exciting to talk about. Stan, if I can impose upon you, a listener does have a question here concerning the upcoming.
Not a problem.
The upcoming blood moon eclipse this year, and how would this, if at all, impact the Earth's crust and tectonic movement? This by Suzanne G.
All right. Well, Suzanne, I don't know that it would directly affect mechanically what happens on the Earth, but it is certainly possible that this is a calendar, a celestial calendar put into place, which will relate events on the Earth to prophetic times. In other words, rather than being causal, it's predictive, or it's like a model. The Bible does say the good Lord put the stars and the lights of heavens in there for times and seasons, and that allows us to know when certain things are going to happen on the prophetic calendar. So from that point of view, this blood moon might present a very interesting period of time on Earth right around it, and rather than cause it, it is just simply a calendar on a celestial scale.
Like a bookmark in time is what you're saying, an event marker.
Yes.
Oh,
yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Okay. Fantastic. Wow. Well, Stan, I got to tell you, I want to thank you very much for your time tonight, and I do hope you had a great birthday, just as an aside.
Thanks, I did, and instead of a birthday cake, Holly made me one of my favorite things, a cherry pie with her famous crust.
Ooh,
and
wow.
She had 6 blue candles, each of them being for 10 years, and then the other 9 were different colors, so it came up to 69. And then, happy birthday carved into the top of the crust. So.
Wow. And she bakes, too. What a great lady. Writes, bakes. Oh, that's tremendous. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you, Stan. And we really appreciate your time. And once again, the imposition of your time going over. But we thank you for that.
That's not an imposition. It's okay. And if your listeners do have questions, some of them already do this, but if they'll write to my email and let me know a couple days ahead of time so I can prepare, any graphics or things that are needed to show people or sound bites, I'd appreciate that. And
fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, God bless you, my friend, and you take care of yourself until next week. Both you and Holly just stay safe out there. Stay warm, too.
As we say to our dogs, happy tails to you. Bye, guys.
Good night, Stan.
Take care. On this Tuesday, February 11th, 2014, we're going to hit some news and then take some phone calls at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. First, this from the New American. Your savings, your 401k, and retirement are in danger. It talks about a story from a man. He says, I went to sleep Friday as a rich man. I woke up a poor man. I lost all my money. That was the tearful lament of 65-year-old John Demitoro, who went fishing in a village in Cyprus, southern coast. In one fell swoop, he lost his life savings, the result of 35 years of hard work and thrift in the capital levy imposed on Cyprus by International Monetary Fund, the European Commission, European Central Bank, a trio commonly known as the Troika. In March of last year, the Troika announced that as part of the deal for its resolving the Cypriot banking financial crisis, Cyprus would have to impose a one-off capital levy, a one-time tax savings on deposit in Cypriot banks. Now, that's a one-time tax on savings deposits. You heard me right. A tax on putting money in your bank. This was sold to the public globally and the EU as necessary and just solution because Cyprus had become a haven for money laundering for Russian billionaires, according to reports from different German and Italian media. It goes on to say that this man, Dumitru, is one of many victims of this devastating haircut, as they call it, for many of them, especially elderly elderly pensioners unable to go out and work because of to recoup their losses. A more accurate depiction would be an amputation or even decapitation. However, regardless which anatomical metaphor is adapted, the key point is the IMF imposed a levy and should be named for what it truly was, a very brazen form of confiscation, theft, robbery, or plunder. And it represents a dangerous new phase in the political, economical development of the New World Order. It is not a mere chance that the capital levy for common depositors was first tried on tiny Cyprus with a population of barely 1 million, and announcing for merely 0.2% of the Eurozone GDP, Cyprus is an easy mark, and from the standpoint of the Troika globalist, it's a good experimental case. But those who are paying attention, the signals are unmistakable that the lords of finance and the central banking fraternity do not view this as a one-off event. They plan to use this tool very broadly in the coming months. Indeed, the IMF and top central banking masters have already said so, as we will show. And we are already seeing this in Poland, with other nationalization of private pension funds, and replays, as in Canada and New Zealand, with proposals for Cyprus-style depositor bail-ins. But the big prize being eyed, of course, is the United States. If you think that what has happened to Cyprus and Poland can happen here, you may end up tragically like Mr. John de Maitre, destitute. Not only that, but you may find that, like Cyprus, you have lost your freedom, your independence, and your national sovereignty, and that the policies affecting you most directly are being dictated by international bankers and bureaucrats beyond any accountability through elections and national laws. And it goes on to talk about taking the Cyprus tax global. In October 2013, a study in the IMF's Fiscal Monitor entitled Taxing Times sent shivers and shocks through the financial world. Among the most jarring proposals in the 107-page report is a suggestion of a one-off capital levy following so closely on the heels of IMF's Cyprus levy. The implications are ominous, to say the least, according to IMF's Taxing Times. The sharp deterioration of the public finances in many countries has revived interest in a capital levy, a one-off tax on public or private wealth, as an exceptional measure to restore debt sustainability. The appeal is that such a tax, if it is implemented before advance is possible, and there is a belief that it will never be repeated, does not distort behavior and may be seen by some as fair. There have been illustrators support, including Pigot, Ricardo, and it goes on to name some other people here, which names I can't pronounce, from the IMF. But anyway, long story short, they say bail out or bail in. A bail-in, that's just another crafty word the weasels of finance have coined to throw off the bumpkins who are rebelling against further taxpayer-funded bank bailouts. In a bail-in, the bondholders, mostly institutions, and bank shareholders, followed by savings depositors, would foot the bill for the risky bank portfolio's toxic mortgage-backed securities that go sour. But as we've seen over and over again, the big insider institutions most responsible for this speculative bubbles get off the hook and leave others holding the bag, others being those people who have accounts in banks and who have 401ks and retirement savings. But this, we started off talking about the bankers today, their mysterious disappearances and nail gun deaths. This is some in-your-face stuff to say that they're going to take. I mean, just imagine this. You get out of work on a Friday, say you get paid on a Friday. You go cash your check. We'll say you have a bank account, but you take your check to the bank that your employer uses. So you cash your check. You take the money, say your check's $10. You take your $10, you go to your bank. You deposit your $10 in your bank. Well, under this, they can take $2 of your deposit and call it a tax. So when you get your paycheck, you get all these deductions with all these funny initials next to it, FICA, SSI, whatever else. Being taxed and overtaxed to death is what's happening. And this is, as they say, just a highway robbery. I mean, these people are out of their mind, insane, greedy, gluttonous people killers. I mean, I don't know what else to call them. But to think that this could happen, that it is happening in civilized, not third world countries, but in, what would you call them? The top nations on the globe?
Yeah. Look, we are in for it. No matter how we look at it, no matter what we cannot say this any more plain than we already have. Right now, if you've got your money in the bank and it's more than 3 months of bill paying money, then you shouldn't have that, at least in our view. Now, we're not financial planners, economists, or whatever, but the fact is, why would you put your cash, your currency, into an institution that's going to tax you or going to charge you, or potentially, I'm of the opinion, if you don't hold it in your hand, if you can't guard it, if you don't possess it, you don't own it. Why would you lend it to the bank? Would you give it to your credit-worthy neighbor to hang on to? That's what we're seeing take place right now, and we're going to feel the effects of that very thing happen. I got an email from somebody here. I just want to let me just double check here. Let me pull this up.
Well, you're pulling that up.
Here it is.
Okay.
Marlon D. writes, when does and when do you think that the global currency reset might take place? Well, this answer would be to Marlon, and I've got a couple of other emails from others asking pretty much the same question. I think we're seeing it take place, because if we look at the push toward the petro-yuan, or yuan, however you want to pronounce that, then you're seeing the structure of it being take place. Now, if you're asking when we're going to see the 70 to 80% value of our dollar get taken out, I don't know. And I've asked that question of others. We don't know, but we do believe it's going to be within the next 12 to 18 months. It could be in the next 12 days. Honestly, I think if people had the answer to that question, or if people knew the answer to that question, they would be screaming it from the rooftops, or acting in such a manner that you would be able to, people who watch this stuff for a living, would be able to tell that something is that close. So all I can say is, I think we're already in this global reset process. I don't know when the trigger event's going to take place, or what the trigger event might be.
You're exactly right that we are in the process. I mean, we have the International Monetary Fund, we have the World Bank, more and more writing out, they're releasing their publications from their secret meetings with the world elite, the satanic elite, and you don't really see those. You got to go look and search, for people if you want to do research on this. Just search IMF PDF in a search engine. And then if you want to go further than that, go to the search results, and you can search for anything that was published in the last year or the last month. Do the same thing for the World Bank. But these policies, these papers that these people are writing, these satanic elite are putting together, their policies are being implemented here and there by banks in this country. So even though they're the IMF or the World Bank, they're not part of the United States of America. They are, because the banks and the people here, the leaders here, are following their models. Correct.
And there was an excellent interview done with Jim Willey, the U.S. dollar implosion and petrodollar demise in 2014. That's the name of it. U.S. dollar implosion and petrodollar demise in 2014. It was done last week, I believe it was. It's quite a lengthy interview by Paul Sandhu, and there were some explosive things shared. The talk about the U.S. and London bankers stealing Saudi Arabia's gold reserve was and using them to cover their own shortages. It's something that folks, if you have the opportunity, definitely take a listen to Jim Willey, U.S. dollar implosion and petrodollar demise. And the interesting thing is you're going to be hearing a lot of things that V had said when he was on with Steve Quayle a couple of, 7, 8, 9 months ago, even a year ago now, I believe it was, when V was first on. So take a listen to that. Jim Willey, interviewed by Paul Sandhu, and it's about an hour and 20 minutes in length.
I heard that click as soon as you were done talking, meaning I'm done for the moment. Another news story here. We mentioned, Stan was on. Homeland Security purchase 141,000 rounds of sniper ammo. DHS is buying more bullets with a solicitation of over 141,000 rounds of sniper ammunition. According to a solicitation posted on FedBizOps, the federal agency is looking to procure more than 141,160 rounds of Hornady 308 Winchester 168 AMAX TAP ammunition. Such ammunition is sometimes retailed as Zombie Max, a marketing gimmick alluding to its power. What makes the 308 ammunition so deadly is the long-range capability of the round. Notes James Smith, the ability is called ballistic coefficient, or the efficiency of a projectile in overcoming air resistance as it travels to its target.
$1.20 a round. $1.20 a round, folks.
Wow.
This is not cheap stuff. You're right. The ability is this ballistic coefficient. This is powerful ammunition. This is not cheap. This is so 7,058 boxes of this. A 308 Winchester.
You know what popped into my head when just now when you were talking is Cuomo. You don't need automatic weapons, or you don't need sniper ammunition to kill deer. What are they going to use this for? I mean,
well, I think we know the answer to that, don't we? It's us. I
don't know too many citizens who run around with bulletproof vests.
I'm not sure
it matters, but
I'm not sure this would matter, especially in the headshot. But yeah, I know. But still, think about just think about this, folks. You know what along with this, did you see the news about the mayors? Now, if you live in the United States and you're listening to this, folks, I would urge you to check with the city in which you live or live near to see whether your mayor is part of this Mayors Against Illegal Guns. I even have a problem with the name.
Mayors Against Illegal Guns. First of all, guns aren't illegal.
Well,
I know what they mean, but
yeah, it's just poor. But see if your mayor is part of this, because
is our mayor a part of this?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. You didn't know that?
I did not know that, and that actually makes a lot of sense because the last open carry rally we had, you remember what happened there?
Right. In our hometown, even though you can open carry in our state.
Right. I can walk down the street with a shotgun or a handgun.
Or a gun on your hip.
A gun on my hip without a concealed carry permit. That's
correct.
Open carry states have that provision.
No, of course, that's in theory.
Right.
And of course, here in our community, our city, the city attorney said you cannot. In fact, I wanted to get the gentleman on our program that organized the rally, the open carry rally, but he said the city solicitor said you could not congregate in parks, in the city parks.
Right. There's
carry.
Apparently some kind of ordinance that says, you can't do this. I mean, you can't go to city parks with the open carry rallies, but they've done this since I can remember without it.
Right. And folks, here's what we're doing too. I might as well tell you folks right now. Somebody had sent an email, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago asking for pocket constitutions. I just ordered, I think, 100 of them with our logo, our business name, or the radio show name and logo, and information about our show on the front and back cover. And then inside is the actual Constitution of the United States. I think I ordered 100 or a couple. I don't recall, but so we should have that this week. But the other thing I'm doing is I'm also putting together a business card. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever gone into a business, and I do make it a point to confront the business owner. If I go into a business that has a sign on the front that said guns aren't welcome or no guns, you can't take your guns in here, I will not spend a dime there. I don't care what business it is. Now, we're having business cards made up with our name of our show and also the message to the extent that we would. You can hand this to the business owner and say, because of your no gun allowed policy, I'm not gonna spend my money at your business. Essentially, that's what it says, and it explains the Second Amendment on a business card, and I think it's pretty effective. The message, I think it's very effective. So we're having those drawn up as well, made up as well. Just as an FYI. But getting back to this nationwide gun confiscation, it came out this week that it is the agenda, the objective, and we knew this. The Mayors Against Illegal Guns, it's their objective. Register, to have all the guns registered, to limit the number of rounds for the magazine, not clip, unless you've got an M1 rifle. The correct terminology is magazine. But essentially to ban all private ownership of weapons. Now, I think in Canada you can have weapons, but you have to have them in a storage locker. Or
in New York, they're enacting bills to make people get liability insurance for the privilege of owning a firearm. See, and folks, this is something that we as rational adults can talk about. For example, we're licensed as a corporation to conduct investigations in the private sector in the state of New York. Now think about this. It costs a lot of money relative to other states. First of all, the standards are extremely high. You've got to jump through a lot of hoops to have a investigative and private security license in the state of New York. Now, for the new listeners tuning into this, our business was cut down when we voiced our positions publicly on the radio. And one of our our biggest client, the Fortune 100 client, said, you know what? That's not too private for a private investigator. We don't agree with, nor do we like you talking about these political issues because you work for us. You don't, and therefore you shouldn't talk about this kind of stuff. So, in 1 second, in 1 day of I think it was last year, or at the end of the year before, we lost all of our business out of New York State in that one moment. Now, thanks to you folks, just being a listener-supported show, we thank you so much because we were on the ropes. I mean, our income was lost right then and there. But here, I guess the point is, I ventured too far off the farm here. The point is this. They make it very difficult. New York State, in particular, makes it very difficult for you to do business because, for example, if you're going to have an armed guard at a McDonald's or some business, you've got to have a $5 million
liability insurance policy. Now, you might think, well, that's to be expected. That's the cost of doing business. Fine. Then you've got to have a number of other conditions met. The point I'm getting at, and perhaps that's not the best of examples, however, because you're dealing with the ability to work in the state of New York versus a right, a God-given right to protect yourself. But nonetheless, the theory is kind of the same. Intellectually here, this is gun control by other means. To require a liability policy to have, to own, to possess a weapon. Is there anything in the federal in the U.S. Constitution that requires this? No. So is this a good law? No, of course not. But you're right. This is a method of backdoor gun control, as is the closing of the lead smelting plant here in the United States, the last one. You're going to see ammunition get very scarce from this. So the point I was making initially was this mayors against illegal guns. One of the close members of this organization came out and said, and let me get this quote exactly here. There was a gentleman, and this mayor was talking, I believe it was in where we were here not too long ago, Joe, in Poughkeepsie, New York, where he was talking at this rally, a protest. A man held up a sign which read "Stop Gun Ban." Now, Martinez, a mayor formerly part of this Mayors Against Illegal Guns, said the following, and I quote, "Needs to inform him that there is no gun ban currently. But because of the work we're doing today, we will make his sign legitimate shortly." So you hang on to that sign. Now think about that. A little bit of candor by a politician. A lot of candor by a politician. So the true intent, that is the true intent of these gun control measures, is the complete banning, the outright banning of your right to bear arms. And we know that. I mean, you might be sitting back saying, look, why are you telling us this? We know this. Well, if we know it, we need to do something about it. Just like the overlay on our website, which will go off tonight, midnight tonight, which says, look, we need to really barrage our Congress, our representatives about the NSA surveillance. We've got to keep pushing this information out there, and never let up. We cannot afford to let up. To let people know that registration leads to confiscation always and forever. And of course, the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, that is their agenda. And who is their poster child? Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And there you have it. It's all about banning weapons.
Yes, it is. And, they're trying to make this like they did communist Russia or communist China under Mao or under Stalin. The people, the criminals, want all the guns so they can have all the control. That's the ultimate form of control. And not that, people need guns so they have them so they can go out and kill people, but they're a great deterrent. One would be much more cautious into breaking into somebody's house or trying to come after somebody if they know that person has a gun.
I misspoke. The mayor of Poughkeepsie, New York, Mayor John Thazak, said that he quit the group after realizing it was merely a vehicle for Bloomberg and others to promote his or their personal gun control agenda. That's what I misstated the name of the person.
All right. In this, I just found Kerry draws Israeli criticism And this is interesting. I don't know if you saw this, Dad. It says only a year into his tenure as America's top diplomat, Secretary of State John Kerry has made at least 10 trips to the Middle East to broker a peace agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians. He has also drawn two of the most pointed public barbs that Israeli officials have directed at an American Secretary of State in decades. Strategic Affairs Minister Yuval Steinzen told reporters in Jerusalem on Sunday that Kerry has said hurtful, unfair, intolerable things and accused the secretary of trying to force the Jewish state to negotiate with a gun to its head. Triggering Stein's gun comment was by Kerry at Secretary Conference in March in Munich on February 1st. He was explaining how deeply the desire for an Israeli-Palestinian accord is felt around the world before veering into speculation about the consequences that could befall Israel if such an accord is not secured, presumably under the auspicious Kerry's own shuttle diplomacy. Everywhere I go in the world, Kerry said in Munich, wherever I go, I promise you, no exaggeration, the Far East, Africa, Latin America, one of the first questions out of the mouth of a foreign minister or prime minister or a president is, can you guys do something to help bring an end to this conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis?
Well, one of the big parts in this, folks, please remember, we are going to be this is a game of musical chairs, and the United States is going to be the odd man out in this game of musical chairs. The bottom line with this is America is not going to come to the aid of Israel. If anything, we're going to be supporting those who are against Israel. The big part of this plan that we're seeing take place in Israel, don't you find it amazing that we don't even recognize, or we cannot even mouth the word Jerusalem, the name of Jerusalem, is being the capital. We have not recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. No, we've got our embassy in Tel Aviv. But to rub salt in the wound, what we're doing is we're demanding Israel to give up land to the indefensible borders. And people reference the 1967 borders as borders. They were never borders. Those were armistice lines. So what we're compelling the nation of Israel to do is to draw back to indefensible borders, indefensible positions, in exchange for us partaking in taking Assad out. I blame the Israeli government in a large part for a lot of this. You've got to understand the complexities of the Middle East power structure taking place, or the agenda of the Middle East and those in play. But Syria is a big part of this. They want Assad gone. Israel, Netanyahu, they want Assad gone. And in exchange, they want Assad gone so bad that they're willing to create a Palestinian state with the help of America, Kerry what I still call it the Kerry Clinton agenda. I think Bill and Hillary Clinton have a lot to do yet with the global politics. But
yeah, and have you seen
all part of it?
I've never seen so far away from an election the promotion. Hillary Clinton is being hailed, and I found an article here that actually talks about the statistics. I think it was over 80 media. Here it is, Hillary Watch. Last week, cable news devoted 80 segments to Hillary Clinton. I've never seen the promoting of a potential candidate so soon and so constant as we are seeing for Hillary Clinton. It says the study of the three major news stations' programming between Monday, February 3rd, and Sunday, February 9th, found they devoted 80 segments to Clinton last week for a total of 173 minutes, all during a week in which Clinton, who does not currently hold office and has not announced candidacy for an election, almost 3 years away, said and did almost nothing. And
the dream ticket here is Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama. What do you guys think about that, folks? Can you imagine?
Well, they're talking about Clinton-Paul race also, but, I mean, as I said, we're 3 years away. 2 years away, 2.5 years away, 3 years away, whatever. Why so much attention? Is there a message being given here, subliminally, covertly, or is this just conditioning?
I don't know what to say. And ladies and gentlemen, you can certainly draw your own conclusions from this. I don't know what to say except that I think we have to look at the handlers. If we want answers, let's take a few steps back and look at the handlers, where we're headed with this.
Yeah.
Are we not? But Joe, aren't we headed?
I mean, it really doesn't matter who the next leader is of this.
Well, what Greg Jackson said last night.
We talked about that at the end of the Bush administration. Would there be an election? I say there will be, barring any unforeseen end of the world type calamities, or end of the nation type.
Probably right.
Calamities, but they're not elections; they're selections, and as somebody in the chat so eloquently put it, it's all rigged anyway, or it's all a rigged game regardless. And it is. But to see the amount of attention given to Hillary Clinton so soon is just, I don't know what the angle is there, because you're either trying to make sure that she does not get that seat, or you are completely throwing out this propaganda for conditioning in a mindset as though she will already have gotten the presidency before the election takes place.
That's right.
But moving on, as we were here in the last 10 minutes, Obama administration considering drone killing of U.S. citizen. A United States citizen accused of being an overseas al-Qaeda facilitator could soon be killed by an American drone, the Associated Press reported on Monday. But first, the U.S. government must find a way to legally launch such a strike. What do you mean, legally launch a strike? They've already killed U.S. citizens overseas with drones. And the director of the FBI has not answered whether it's legal or not.
Look, I'll just say this. This is my prediction.
Goodness.
You're going to see a drone strike on American soil, and it's going to be a very well-publicized event. This comes to me based on information from a couple of different sources, none of which you've heard on air, but a couple of different sources. What they're attempting to do, what this government, this regime is attempting to do, is to justify a drone strike, the first drone strike on American soil, and the killing of a potential threat, a terrorist threat. It's going to take place here on American soil. And one might say, well, there are no armed drones flying over U.S. soil. Oh, yes, there are. And we are well ahead of the projections. You recall, I think by 2020 they wanted to have, or 2018 they wanted to have, 30,000 in the sky. And, of course, we were assured, or have been assured, that these drones are not armed. Based on information that I've gotten, yes, we have more, many, many, many times more, the number of drones flying in the sky. Yes, some are armed with a particular type of missile, and yes, they're looking for a reason to use these on U.S. soil. And now, when I say looking for a reason, it's almost as humorous or ironic when Joe, you said about killing a U.S. citizen to justify it, legally justify it. Where in the U.S. Constitution? Once again, we have to look at the law of the land.
And recently, the president gave a speech where he talked about, murder and killing being one of the worst things you can do, saying how, nobody has a right to kill another person, blah, blah, blah. I say blah, 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 not because I don't believe that, but because at the same time he's saying that with one side of his mouth. The other side of his mouth, he's, telling these people who are in the military, pull the trigger on that drone, drop a drone on that wedding, or a bomb on that wedding from a drone. But the hypocrisy is just incredible.
Well, we're talking about a lawless regime that's taken us down to the equivalent of a banana republic. Ladies and gentlemen, also, just very simply, look at this Affordable Care Act briefly with respect to violations of the law. If you want a very clear example of how Obama is violating the law, Obama, Treasury Secretary Jack Lew, the Treasury Department, they issued new regulations that, for the second time, directly violate the plain and very unambiguous text of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act by allowing businesses to avoid the law. And you see what they're doing here is they're changing things on the fly by executive order, by administrative edict. This is a violation of the very law that was passed, that everyone says, well, it's law, so accept it. Well, it's only law, apparently, as long as it agrees or Obama agrees with it.
We're going to take a call. We're going to go to area code 503. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello.
Good evening.
Right there. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Well, what I'm calling about, and you guys knew nothing about this, Doug knew nothing about this, and Brother Marcus knows nothing about this, but I really felt a strong unction earlier today to send some money to Brother Marcus to help people on the reservation there with these monstrous gas bills. And they're running out of gas, and they've apparently had some deaths.
Yes,
but
there
I'm
were
going
three.
to send $100. Yeah, 3. So I recall a time when I was 8 months pregnant, and I was stuck in a terrible ice storm in West Texas out by the lake with my daughter. The whole place froze up, everything, all the pipes burst, and the Lord preserved us with one little bitty tiny space heater in a room I closed off for 3 days. So I just felt it very strongly. So despite the fact that I don't have a lot of money, I'm going to send off $100 tomorrow to Brother Marcus, P.O. Box 18, Porcupine, South Dakota, 57772.
And just for people listening, Brother Marcus's address is listed on our website. You just go to guests, and it's under his name, his contact information. Well, that's awful nice of you. And we also support him as well in a number of ways. So that's very nice of you. And of all the missions out there, people seem to go to the Dominican Republic, for example, which is a good thing, on missions, as missionaries. However, we've got to realize that here in the States, we've got people that are equally bad off.
Mm-hmm.
So, but thank you very much. That's nice.
Well, I just hope everybody listening will, take it to the Lord, and if He so directs you, then please join me. And I trust Brother Marcus to do with it as he sees fit to do. It's a good mission.
Well, thank you very much. And I know Brother Marcus Samuel appreciates it. God bless you. And folks, we do have before and after pictures of the reservation out there with the work that he's done, the physical labor he and Curtis has done. So
they have done some fabulous things for people. I mean, the help that they provide to people. I mean,
it's fabulous. It really is. It's a good
anybody
deal.
Who supports Brother Marcus, I can tell you from what he's shown us, he is making such a positive difference out there. He is truly helping. I mean, He's finding the poorest people that need the most help, and he is applying that support directly to those people and making a huge impact on their lives. And we can't thank him enough. And folks, keep him in your prayers because he is doing such a fabulous work.
Absolutely. Just a kind of a non sequitur here, but a very priceless and brief statement. In a bid to stem taxpayer losses for bad loans guaranteed by federal housing agencies Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, Senator Bob Corker from Tennessee proposed that borrowers be required to make a 5% down payment in order to qualify for a loan. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember when you had to have 10% or a significant percent down to buy a house? Well, guess what? His proposal was rejected, 57 to 42 straight party line vote, because, as Senator Chris Dodd explained, passage of such a requirement would restrict home ownership to only those who can afford it. Yeah. Tomorrow, Joe, if I think we would like to dissect it into, investigate and explore and explain, among other things, what's going on with the immigration situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also get more into the groundwork of the New World Order, the Illuminati, the power behind the events concerning what we mentioned at the top of the hour. And that's the agenda of the power elite, the Luciferians, the Satanists, if you will, with respect to different aspects, including but not limited to Maypole celebration, as that's coming up, and also the stuff that we're seeing in the Olympics, or that we saw in the Olympics and the Grammys,
and it will be backed up by Scripture. We'll give Scripture references as to the Lord telling us, how this evil is going to play out, what their plans are, what they're doing, and what will be the result.
And I think it's extremely important too when we talk about the militant agendas. The militant agendas of the powers. We could talk about Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, which we will, but to understand the evil behind that, we're going to take that apart as